Hi everyone, no news today, so let's get straight into the video. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. So Fear and Greed Index did step down pretty substantially down to 67 for the day. Momentum and strength continue to hover basically unchanged. Breadth actually got into extreme greed here today. That's been hovering in regular greed most days, but that stepped up a little bit. Put call ratio also in extreme greed. And then to the contrary, now we have market volatility stepping up, heading into the data release tomorrow. Don't forget CPI does come out tomorrow, so you would expect it to step up a little bit. Safe haven demand still in regular fear, junk bond demand still in extreme greed. So mixed signals across the board here with a little bit of concern going into CPI, but generally still bullish sentiment. Moving over to breadth, you can see today was expected to be a slight bullish day. We did not get that, so it seems like we're getting a little bit of sideways chop. We'll see how that plays out tomorrow. If inflation does step up again, that's going to be extremely bearish. The last time it was slightly higher than expected. That was very bearish for markets. So keeping an eye on that, and then into the options expiration, still expected to be generally neutral to bearish. Moving over to the calendar, you can see tomorrow expected to be neutral with the CPI report, bullish into Wednesday, and then triple witching on that Friday session. Moving over to the calendar, you can see 3-year note auction did come in a little bit higher than the previous, nothing crazy. Consumer expectations for inflation also at 3%, so nothing crazy there. And then looking at Tuesday, obviously CPI, the big numbers for tomorrow, 10-year note auction, very interesting also. Then we get the federal budget, that could be interesting. I don't think it'll be anything crazy. You can see it's already expected to be extremely negative, so I would expect that to be true. And then looking at Wednesday, basically nothing on the calendar, 30-year note auction. But then we go into Thursday with PPI, obviously that's going to affect markets also, along with retail sales. Moving over to the put call ratio, you can see these options jumped up to over 5 million, massive options expiration, and you can see max pain all the way down at 491. So that is significantly lower than current price. You can still see there are a ton of puts in the market, tons and tons of puts. Put call ratio still very high at 2.9. Call walls 522, 520 in that region. Obviously would not expect to go higher than that for the Friday expiration. This could absolutely go down to that 500, 495 area. That could be interesting. Anywhere between 500 and 520 does make sense. But that's a pretty wide range. Right now, I would expect it to move a little bit lower just based on the data that we have coming out this week and that max pain number of 491. Moving over to the charts, you can see we did continue lower just a little bit, got all the way down to the 200 on the hourly chart, ended up bouncing from that level and then rallied most of the day. And then you can see we're up a little bit after hours, momentum slightly bullish, RSI slightly bullish. So dipped a little bit lower, held that 200, slight bounce. Momentum on the daily chart still bearish, RSI neutral here, above the 50 line, but below the SMA. And you can see it was technically bearish on the day, but we did make up those losses after hours. So 0.09, but up a little bit. Still holding 509.77. The low of day was 508.50. In terms of levels, 509.77, 21 still sitting at 505.37. And then if we get that max pain finish, that would put us right around that 55 EMA, which is currently at 490.06, just below my level here at 491.50. So that would be the region for max pain. Moving over to the Tasty charts, basically no change, still in the same range here on the daily chart. Let's look at it on the hourly. You can see we almost got to that third ATR band, didn't quite get there, bounced off of that second ATR band, bounced a little bit. You can see some volume coming through as we held that 8 EMA throughout the session here on the hourly chart. Once we got above it here at the 10 o'clock candle, so got above it, held that throughout the session, looks a little bit stronger here into the after hours. If we get up to that second ATR band, that would be about 513.76. I would expect some resistance in that area here. You can see the low going back to that 6 a.m. candle from the Friday session around that 514 area. We'll see how that plays out. But right now, a little bit bullish after hours. Moving over to the NASDAQ, this actually looked quite a bit more bearish. You can see we dipped low, hovered around that 438 level, below the 21, and we are still at that on the hourly chart. Looks quite bearish, continued to reject in that area, could not really make any gains. We were down more on the session, 0.37. Momentum bearish, RSI neutral to bearish here. Not a ton of volume either. Hit that 21 and bounce. The 21 here at 436.27. So found a little bit of strength there at VWAP also. But again, if this area breaks, you got the 55 EMA sitting down at 423. So obviously, it's going to be dictated by CPI data tomorrow, but this looks a little bit weaker than the S&Ps. Moving over to the NASDAQ, you can see that same dip low. We're below the 8 EMA. You can see that strong selling on that Friday session, so definitely does not look as bullish. You can see momentum stepping down here on the daily chart. And then on the hourly, very similar thesis, continued to reject at that 8 EMA, definite coiling, definite consolidation ahead of CPI. We'll see if it can bounce. Second highest ATR sitting at 441.54. See if we can get into that area. That would be an area of some resistance. You can see these previous peaks here from the 11 o'clock candles on 6 March. I would expect that to be a little bit of short-term resistance in that same zone. You can see that's the low here from the pre-market candles on the 5th as well. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow, you can see the Russell down 0.79, looked very weak, broke 206.50, got almost down to my next level at 204.62, right at that support level. If it's going to hold, it needs to do it now. Otherwise, if it breaks here, that's going to be quite bearish. 21 sitting down at 202.34, and then the Dow touched that lower trend line, bounced a little bit, got back above this trend line here. Now it's between the 9 and 21 EMAs again. Momentum and RSI still neutral here. Momentum on the Russell definitely bearish, continues to roll down. RSI just barely below the SMA, so that's not good either. Not looking great on the Russell. Moving over to the MAG7, you can see this was quite bearish on the day as well. 1.55%, gapped right to the trend line and then sold off. It is bouncing a little bit after hours, but still bearish momentum. RSI breaking down quite big. And then looking at the hourly chart, you can see very similar thesis. Tried to rally early in the session, sold off basically the rest of the session, and it is below all the EMAs and SMAs on the hourly chart. Momentum ticking towards bullish a little bit. RSI definitely bearish, so short term, a little bit of weakness here on the MAG7. Moving over to Apple and Tesla. Apple showed some signs of life here. We said it started to roll up on the Friday session, and then it gapped higher on the Monday, 1.18%, hit the 9 EMA and pulled back. It's up a little bit after hours. So Apple showing a little bit of strength after its waterfall sell-off. Not super convincing, but it could have a little bit of follow through, something like this, where you see a bit of a roll up. Ends up creating a lower high and then eventually breaks back down. We'll see how that plays out. 21 EMA at 179.74. My next level here, 176.15. We'll see how those play. And then looking at Tesla, slight bullish day, 1.39%. Could not get above that 177.70 level. Still watching for that kind of flag setup and breakdown, which would give you a super low price target of around 125. Next level for me, 167.34. Moving over to Meta and NVDA. Meta was down 4.42%. Big down day, $22.34. Gap down and fell right at that 21 EMA. Did close below it during the market session and then bounced above it a little bit after hours. We'll see how that plays out. If this breaks here, it could have a long way down. You can see this previous gap from their earnings was very powerful. Momentum bearish, RSI bearish. Absolutely has some room to the downside, but obviously the catalyst of earnings could keep this higher. And then NVIDIA, I did watch some analysis of this. A gap up and then a sell-off, giving back all of that ground and then some is a pretty bearish indicator, especially at the top of such a huge run. You can see obviously it's been massive on NVIDIA. And now we gap down more, 2% to the downside, momentum rolling over, RSI breaking down. Everything looks pretty weak on both of these stocks, especially considering the runs that they've had. Moving over to staples and discretionary. Staples up 0.55%. Continues to be a rotation into safety. Got back above 75.40. Looks very good. Momentum bullish, RSI bullish. And then you got discretionaries down 0.27. Momentum bearish, RSI bearish. So definite rotation out of growth and into those safer stocks. And that seemed to continue here today. Moving over to industrials and utilities. Industrials down quite a bit. 0.52. Down to that 9 EMA at 121.58. Closed above it, but we're below it after hours. Momentum rolling to bearish. First time we've seen that in a while. RSI also looking bearish there, breaking below the SMA. And then looking at utilities, another strong day, 0.5. Got up to that price target, 64.20. Momentum bullish, RSI bullish. So continuing to see that same kind of rotation into safer stocks and out of growth. Moving over to breadth on the 20 and the 50-day average. 20-day breadth still positive, continuing to grind higher very, very slowly. Not to that resistance yet at 86.50, but continuing to grind, holding that 9 EMA. Did wick a pretty decent low, but nothing we haven't seen before, and then closed bullish. And then we got the 50-day average pushing above 77.46. So breadth continuing to broaden despite the weakness we're seeing in markets. Definitely interesting. Momentum bullish, RSI bullish, still looking very strong, if not even accelerating here on the 50-day breadth. Moving over to yields, they did catch a little bit of a bid here on Monday. Momentum ticking towards bullish. RSI still neutral here. RSI on the 10-year still bearish. Momentum ticking towards bullish. Finding a little bit of legs in this area. Obviously, CPI is going to dictate the direction of yields for tomorrow, but it did catch a little bit of a bid, which is interesting going into it. And if CPI comes in hot, obviously these are going to go higher in my opinion. Moving over to the dollar on the hourly and the daily, you can see the dollar actually caught a little bit of a bid, which is interesting. We had a strong wick rejection on the Friday after 2 really powerful down days. And then today, slight bullishness going into CPI. RSI bounced a little bit. Momentum not doing much of anything. So we'll see how that plays out tomorrow. Definitely going to push the dollar around on that news release. Moving over to bonds, not much of anything happening here. J&K still flat. TLT slightly bearish, but barely 0.05, right in the same region. Waiting to see what happens with the CPI tomorrow. Still holding above that 55-day moving average. Still looks a little bit bullish to me, even with momentum rolling over. As long as these levels hold and then we get a decent CPI number, we should see TLT go higher. If CPI comes in hot, then this should go a little bit lower. Moving over to the VIX, we did see some weakness across markets, so the VIX did gap higher. Got all the way up to 1604. We did expect it to go a little bit higher. I think 16.8, 16.5 in this region makes sense for tomorrow, which would mean some more weakness to come. This has continued to hold higher lows, and it does look strong here. So VIX still going higher into the news release tomorrow. Moving over to my accounts, you can see I was down just a little bit on the day. Not too bad considering that the NASDAQ was down about 1/3%. I was only down about 0.1, so still doing okay there. IWM, I forgot to roll this out, so that's a bit of a bummer. Collected all the credit on that 207. I thought about rolling it down. I didn't do it. Definitely should have. I could have collected a little bit more. It is bouncing a little bit after hours. You can see up to about 205.70 or so. We'll see if that bounces. Hopefully I get lucky and the IWM goes higher on the CPI. If not, I'm going to be a little bit out of luck. And then looking at the Qs, I did roll out that put position and down to 439, holding a little bit of a profit there, trying to protect myself on those put positions as the markets continue to look a little bit weak. Got about $4.75 credit on that. Still have $4.75 credit on that. And then for my covered call position, $2.93 credit. Obviously, there's lots of volatility in the market going into the CPI data. So sold at 437. Thought about going out one strike, but pretty rich there at almost $3. Happy with that on the day if we get it. And I do have a call position here on the puts for 3 days from now. I don't want to assume too much risk on the call side since I do have a put position. I don't want markets to rally against my calls. I can always put on shares if I need to in order to protect these calls, but right now this is how I'm positioned in a little bit more of a protective position going into CPI. Let me know down in the comment section what you think is going to happen for CPI. Will it drive markets higher, or is this the start of a bigger down move? Definitely like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video, and make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.